For the longest time, the fitness world treated the human body like a one-size-fits-all machine. If you wanted to lose weight or gain energy, the formula was simple: eat less, move more. But there's a massive, glaring hole in that logic, isn't there? We've essentially been applying a male-centric blueprint to a female system that operates on an entirely different biological rhythm.
You're absolutely right. It's actually quite startling when you look at the history of medical and exercise science. For decades, women were often excluded from clinical trials because their hormonal fluctuations were seen as noise that would mess up the data. But that noise is actually the signal. The female body isn't just a smaller version of a male body, it's a sophisticated, dynamic system that prioritizes survival and reproduction through a very delicate hormonal balance.
And when we ignore that balance, things start to go sideways. I think many women feel this intuitively. Those days where a workout that felt easy last week suddenly feels like climbing Everest. Or when clean eating leads to total burnout instead of more energy. Why is the female metabolism so much more sensitive to these shifts?
It comes down to adaptation. The female endocrine system is hyper-aware of its environment. It's constantly scanning for signs of safety or scarcity. When we layer on chronic stress, sleep deprivation, or aggressive calorie cutting, the body doesn't see a fitness goal, it sees a survival threat. It starts downregulating non-essential systems like reproductive health or high-level recovery to save energy. Metabolism isn't just a furnace burning calories, it's a complex communication network involving estrogen, progesterone, cortisol, and insulin.
So it's less like a thermostat and more like a high-stakes negotiation. I'm curious about the menstrual cycle specifically because we're finally starting to talk about cycle syncing. During the luteal phase, that time right before a period, many women report feeling sluggish or having intense cravings. Is that just in our heads, or is there a genuine metabolic shift happening there?
It is very real. During the luteal phase, progesterone rises, which actually increases your basal body temperature. That alone requires more energy, so your metabolic rate actually ticks up slightly. But the trade-off is that your body becomes less efficient at using carbohydrates and more prone to muscle breakdown if you push too hard. If you try to smash a high-intensity interval session when your body is literally running hotter and demanding more recovery, you're going to feel like you're hitting a wall.
That explains so much. It's almost like trying to run a software update while your battery is at 5%. But it's not just the cycle, right? We're living in an era where hustle culture is the norm. Women are juggling careers, families, and social pressures, all while being told they need to look a certain way. How does that chronic mental load translate into physical metabolic stalls?
This is where the nervous system comes in. The brain doesn't distinguish between the stress of a looming work deadline and the stress of a physical predator. Both trigger cortisol. In women, chronically high cortisol can interfere with thyroid function and progesterone production. When your nervous system is stuck in fight or flight, your body holds onto energy, often as visceral fat, as a protective measure. You can't biohack your way out of a nervous system that feels unsafe.
That's a powerful way to put it. The body holding onto energy as a form of protection. It's the opposite of what most fitness influencers preach. They usually say, work harder, push through the pain. But if you're already depleted, more push is actually the last thing you need. It sounds like we're talking about an epidemic of under-recovery.
Exactly. We see this a lot with high-performing women who are training intensely but under-fueling. It's called low energy availability. The body essentially goes into a power save mode. It slows down the metabolism, thins the bones, and disrupts sleep. It's a paradox. The harder you work, the more your body resists change because it's trying to protect you from what it perceives as a famine or a crisis.
So if we can't rely on the old no pain, no gain mantra, how do we actually start listening to these signals? I know we're seeing a rise in wearable tech, things like the OXYZEN ring, that track heart rate variability and sleep. Can seeing those numbers actually help bridge the gap between what we think we should do and what our biology is actually asking for?
Data is the bridge. For example, seeing your HRV drop or your resting heart rate climb during your luteal phase isn't a sign of failure. It's a data point telling you to pivot. Maybe today isn't the day for a heavy lifting session, maybe it's the day for a long walk and extra sleep. When you have that health intelligence, you stop fighting your body and start collaborating with it. It's about moving from static health advice to dynamic living.
It's interesting you mentioned dynamic, because that transition doesn't stop in your 30s. Perimenopause and menopause are these massive shifts that often leave women feeling like strangers in their own skin. The old rules definitely don't apply there, do they?
Not at all. As estrogen fluctuates and eventually declines, the body's relationship with insulin and muscle mass changes. Sleep often becomes fragmented. If a woman tries to use the same diet and exercise plan at 50 that she used at 25, she's likely going to struggle. This phase of life requires a shift toward prioritizing muscle protein synthesis and nervous system regulation. It's a biological transition, not a breakdown, but it requires a new set of tools and a lot more grace.
It feels like the ultimate goal here is metabolic flexibility, the ability for the body to adapt to different stressors without breaking. But to get there, we have to stop punishing the body for being complicated.
Precisely, the complexity is the beauty of it. The female body is incredibly intelligent and adaptive. If it's giving you symptoms, fatigue, cravings, brain fog, it's not broken, it's communicating. The future of women's health isn't about finding a better way to suppress those signals. It's about finally learning the language of female physiology so we can respond with what the body actually needs. Better recovery, strategic fueling, and a respected rhythm.
It's a total paradigm shift. We're moving away from the idea of the body as a project to be fixed and toward the body as a partner to be understood. If we start looking at health through the lens of intelligence rather than just effort, what does the long-term picture look like for women?
It looks like resilience. It looks like a woman who knows when to push because her recovery is high and when to rest because her hormones are shifting. It's about longevity. When you work with your biology instead of against it, you stop burning out. You build a metabolism that supports your life rather than a life that is dictated by your metabolism.
That's a future worth investing in. It really comes down to the idea that we shouldn't just be tracking our health. We should be interpreting it. The data is just the beginning. The wisdom comes in how we change our Sunday morning or our Tuesday workout based on what our body is telling us in real time.
Exactly. The most sophisticated piece of technology you will ever own is your own body. We're finally getting the user manual for the female version, and it turns out it's a lot more interesting than the male version anyway.
Laughs. I think a lot of our listeners would agree with that. It's about time we started honoring that biological symphony instead of trying to silence it. This has been such an eye-opening look at what's really going on under the surface. It's not just about the numbers on a scale. It's about the rhythm of the system.
And that rhythm is where the health actually happens. If you listen closely enough, your body will tell you exactly what it needs to thrive. The question is, are we brave enough to actually slow down and listen?
That's the perfect question to leave our listeners with today. As we move forward, let's stop trying to force our bodies into a mold that wasn't built for us. Let's start leaning into the intelligence of the system. This is OXYZEN Health Intelligence for a more balanced, resilient you. Thanks for joining us.